Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea. What if all of life's biggest disturbances, the anxieties, the losses, the things that keep you up at night, what if they weren't just random? What if they were actually a spiritual calling, a kind of journey for your heart, leading it back to where it truly belongs? So let's just start with this question. Let it sink in for a minute. What if that constant feeling of being unsettled, that hum of anxiety that we all feel, what if it isn't just a problem to be fixed or ignored? What if it's actually a very specific and even merciful call to return home? And that leads us right into this first big idea, what we could call the merciful disturbance. It's a huge shift in how you see things. Instead of seeing all that turmoil as some kind of punishment, we can actually start to see it as a form of divine help. This quote really gets right to the heart of it. It suggests that the instability we feel, it isn't meaningless. It's actually purposeful. It's designed to kind of unhook us from all the things that end up distracting us from what truly matters, that divine source of real peace. And there's a concept for this. It's called tarbiyah. Think of it like a kind of spiritual education, a nurturing process. The whole idea is that God disturbs our attachment to things that are, by their very nature, unstable. Our jobs, relationships, even our own egos. Why? So our heart doesn't build a home in something that was never meant to last. It's a redirection, you see, not a rejection. Okay, so if we start to see this disturbance as a call, then what do? How should we respond? Well, the sources describe the response as an active choice, a really powerful movement of the soul. It's about fleeing to the divine. This instruction from the Quran, wow, it's so short but incredibly powerful. And notice the direction. This is key. It's not just about running away from pain or confusion. It's about running towards a specific destination, towards God, towards certainty, towards safety. So what exactly are we turning away from in this spiritual flight? Well, it's broken down into four main things. First, you're turning from the world's built-in instability and its inevitable disappointments. Second, you're turning from that exhaustion that comes from relying way too much on other people for your ultimate support. Third, from the illusions and the whims of our own self. And finally, from the openings we leave for negativity and despair, for Satan, in our moments of weakness. But here's the thing. This act of fleeing, it's not a one-and-done deal. It actually requires a continuous state of spiritual awareness, a kind of gentle alertness in a world that is constantly trying to lull us back to sleep. And this is what's called the call to wakefulness. This is such a striking warning. It's a profound spiritual wake-up call, really. The logic is so clear. If your greatest spiritual opponent never forgets you, never stops looking for a way in, how can you possibly afford to forget the one who holds your entire being, your very existence in his hand? It frames this awareness not as a chore, but as an absolute necessity. But, and this is so important to get, this wakefulness is not the same thing as living in a state of constant anxiety. Not at all. Anxiety is fear-based, it's exhausting, and it relies on your own strength. Spiritual alertness, on the other hand, is God-reliant. It's actually peaceful. It's this calm awareness that your safety isn't ultimately in your own hands, but in the preserving care of God. And here's a really comforting thought in all of this. If you feel that inner disturbance, if you feel that discomfort with your own spiritual state, that is not a sign of failure. It is the first sign of movement. You see, a heart that's completely comfortable in its negligence, that's the one that's in real danger. The heart that is unsettled, well, it's already started the journey home. So, how do we actually do this? How do we cultivate this wakefulness and make this journey? The central practice that's prescribed is remembrance, or dhikr. And it's presented not just as a single action, but as a ladder you can actually climb, one step at a time. This teaching just lays out the path so gently, so beautifully. It's a gradual ascent. It acknowledges that, hey, we don't start out perfect. We are raised step by step from a place where we're totally distracted to a state of complete immersion. Let's break down how that ladder is built. So here are those stages, laid out as a clear path. You start with heedlessness. This is where your tongue is moving, you're saying the words, but your heart and mind are a million miles away. Then God may raise you to wakefulness, where you're more conscious, more aware of what you're doing.
From there, you might move to presence, where your heart is truly connected. And finally, to absence, a state of immersion where God's presence is stronger than anything and everything else.
So what's the most crucial first step in all of this? It's simple. You don't have to wait until you can start at the top of the ladder. You just have to begin, right where you are, with all your distractions.
Seriously, don't let the idea of perfection become an excuse to do nothing. An imperfect beginning is infinitely, infinitely better than just staying put.
That's it. That is the simple, powerful call to action. Whatever your state is, however distracted you feel right now, just begin. And you might be wondering, why? Why is this so important? Well, because on this path, small beginnings are never looked down on. By simply starting, even imperfectly, you expose yourself to what the tradition calls the breezes of divine mercy. And it's that grace, not your own perfect effort, that can lift you from one stage to the next. That very act of remembering, even in a state of total heedlessness, could be the beginning of your rescue.
And to wrap this all up, the source material actually ends with a prayer that just perfectly captures this entire journey. It's a request to be unsettled from our distractions, to be taken by the hand and raised, step by step, up that ladder of remembrance, from distraction all the way to a state of intimate nearness with the divine alone.